morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is very exciting. I'm gonna read my text and my questions so I can keep the track of the time better. So my name is Rodolfo Peraza. My pronouns are he, him. I'm an artist focused on the public space, virtual and actual. I'm founder director of Mod Foundation, an artist-run non-profit organization that develops arts and technology programs, connecting digital culture with diverse community. As visual, I am a white-skinned man with a black-gray hair and a dressed on black. As artist focused on the public space, I started in the early 2003 in Cuba, using computers for creating new body of science system, pictograms, that was designed to be placed back on the public space. Here we are seeing one image in the screen. That was designed, addressing social disparity and access to technology in a context like Cuba, where internet at that moment was prohibited for almost everybody. In 2006, I created my first video game named Play and Learn, where I transformed the content of a manual of formal education into an embedded style video game where the player has the mission to destroy the content of the book, but the book also shoots you, so you are fighting against ideology. From this experience, using technology as a medium to create this video game and another interactive pieces, led me to collaborate with engineers and learn about software development, frameworks, and infrastructure. This became the foundation of my current work, which focuses on digital culture, immersive technology, and community engagement. In 2017, after migrating to the US, not because I wanted, but because I had to, I had the opportunity to organize an international event focused on art, internet, and data. This event aimed to provide free internet access to a specific community in Miami, known for the low internet penetration. And we visualized on real time the digital footprints using, at that moment, was known as WebVR. Right now it's WebXR. And the event brought together artists, technologies, and policymakers from US and Europe, which is a continent where policies are more advanced than the US, and for us was important to connect these different communities. And that's how Mod Foundation started. It was founded in that year and was part of that event outcome. So right now, I'm gonna invite the panelists to introduce themselves. But before, I'm gonna show some image of this work? It's not. Yes, is that the one that I'm pushing? No, now it's working, yes. So here we are seeing the sign that I did. It was my first installation in the public space, and it was comment about accessibility. In this case, was about internet. I was an artist. I was studying in the university, and we don't have access to internet. I'm talking about 2003. This is an image of the video game that I just talked about it, and this is the public project we did as Mod Foundation, the art had data. We convert a police car in a hotspot. So the people connect through the hotspot in the police car in the neighborhood. And then we give, when you arrive at an airport, for example, that you have a pop-up where you have free Wi-Fi, you sign the agreement, which it says that we're going to be using your data to be visualized on real time on web browser as part of the project. We invite that community to connect with the artists that work with us in that event. And this is kind of the outcome of the web browser, where you have the nodes and the connection of the digital footprints of the people who use the network at the moment of the events. So that was the foundation of the project that we have right now, and the most important program we have in Mod Foundation, which is the exhibition program. And today we have a Whisper activation. Whisper stands for WISP, which is Wireless Internet Service Provider. We usually create Whisper network where the people can connect to the Modverse. You will learn a little bit more about that a little bit later. This is our exhibition space in Miami. And what we are doing is we are prototyping an organization that exists over the internet and in the physical space at the same time. So right now I'm gonna let my peers to present themselves, and let's continue with that. Take the stick so you can.
I think I'm gonna be stickless, right? Can you?
Okay, I can.
Or, yeah, go to the next one, and then we're gonna. I have my own microphone. Thank you, Rodolfo.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Gretchen Andrew, and I'm an artist who hacks systems of power with art, code, and glitter. I am, pronouns are she, her. I am wearing a power blazer and hopefully enough dry shampoo in my hair to make it acceptable that I did not wash it. I'm going to introduce you to a new series of mine called Facetune Portraits that was created with generous support from the Mud Foundation, but also in the context of how I run my studio, thinking about a lot of the conversations I've been hearing about creative entrepreneurship. And as I tell my students, making the work takes as much creativity as making it work. So I want to share a little bit about how I run my studio. So I had two experiences in my early 20s that really shaped the way that I have these three pillars of my studio. One is I got an employment offer contract from Google. And one is that I got an employment offer contract to be in leg fetish porn. And the reason why this is pertinent is because I have a number exactly how valuable my work is to the tech industry and to the entertainment industry. And I have kept those financial values as the absolute minimum of what I'm willing to accept for my job as a cultural producer, as an activist, and someone involved in internet literacy. So I run my studio with sort of these three pillars. My job description that I give myself as an artist, which is to be paid and celebrated for being myself. And the caveat here is that I don't think this is just for artists. I think it's for everybody. And we think about artists as people who sort of have that privilege, but I think of it more as a right. The second is what I call my Champagne Solutions team, which is a team of young women, mostly young women, that I hire who want to work in the art world but can't afford to work for free, which is sort of the going rate in the art world these days. So what I do is they work with me for anywhere between 3 months to a couple years. They develop certain skills. I get a lot of value out of working with them. And they almost all go on to get full-time work in the art world through a direct or indirect connection that they've made through my studio. So it's sort of like an unofficial feeder program. And the third is to have all of my work be subversively mission-driven. I want people to accidentally learn about the internet and technology through my work, but always have it seem kind of like candy and fun. So this series in particular, Facetune Portraits, that you're seeing the process executed here, I think the history of portraiture is very intriguing because it involves so much power dynamics. Who is paying and who is painting and why did someone get painted has a very rich and dramatic and petty history. And so as someone who's interested in power, I wanted to explore sort of the modes of that power is being expressed in contemporary portraiture. So how many of you know what face tuning is? So if you don't know the actual, if you don't know the actual term, it's these algorithms, these filters, these AI-driven data sets that claim to make us more beautiful or acceptable. They're rampant on TikTok and Instagram, but they're on our cell phones. They're built into Zoom. They're everywhere. And the so what I've wanted to do is take this process that's usually digital and seamless and invisible and make it visceral, make us understand what's actually going on here. So with the support from the Mud Foundation, what I was able to do is turn this into a physical process where my studio team and I developed this robot that is able to make these modifications into paint. So I work with collaborators at Matter Labs in New York to use the oil paint printer, and then the actual robot that does the face tuning is a basic plotter, but it is a basic plotter that anyone anywhere in the world can reproduce for $300. And so what this does is change the absolute game for not just like the software and hardware guide of how to build this that's available through Mud's website is like an IKEA guide, but easier. And the components are all very cheap. You can buy like an AxiDraw, it costs a couple $1,000s, it'll make something this big. Or you can use this process to you don't have to do face tuning with it. You can do whatever you want. It's a drawing machine. Anyone can now do this as a result of the support, not just to initially explore and exhibit these concepts, but to have the extra effort that it did take to professionalize this guide and make it into something that people can follow and open source. That's really, I have so much gratitude for the Mud Foundation for like enabling us to make that more accessible, both technically and financially. So I think just like in conclusion to the sort of systems that my studio produces work like this in collaboration with people like Mud. Where this series is right now is, I say it's like kind of ready to leave the studio. And so I do want to put out into the crowd and the universe that the reason why I'm able to have this hiring program that I do and do the internet activism that I do and open source is because I have a career in the fine art world with a commercial angle to it. And so of all the things that we might talk about today, and together, looking for opportunities to exhibit this work institutionally and commercially is the way that I've structured it, so that if your organizations support work like these creative entrepreneurship or hiring programs, there is a pretty direct route to being able to go from supporting this sort of work to supporting the other activities that my broader studio is involved in. So I'm going to hand it off after a big thank you to Rodolfo and the Mud Foundation for giving me the resources to really take this project to where it currently is.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Hello, everybody. My name is Anthony Mendez. I also go by Antonio. And I am a drag performer, performance artist, film, XR, everything, very multimedia. This is not a picture of me, this is Rodolfo in my VR space. My art began as drag. I studied tailoring and technical design, which is an interesting mix to study. And once I was working out in the real world in the industry, I found it very hard to express my creativity, the things that I wanted to do, the skills that I already had. So naturally, I became more involved in the queer community in organizing events as well as storytelling. For me, drag was not necessarily, I didn't use it as a form of entertainment. When I would perform out, it was more storytelling. I would do performances first in nightclubs where, you know, underground scene where drag and queer life and thrives. But then I I was invited to participate in museums and galleries where my storytelling was much more appreciated and could be seen by a different audience. A lot of my work revolves around kind of regurgitating what I see in popular culture, a lot of the things that I was exposed to growing up. Religion imagery, religious imagery and iconography plays a big part in my art as well. I'm first generation Cuban American. Oh, I forgot to say my pronouns. I'm pronoun fluid. I accept he, him, she, they, any pronoun. I am light-skinned Latino, wearing a gray shirt, black pants. Today I am male presenting. And yeah, so my work started kind of as a criticism, a mockery, but also a celebration of our popular culture and a lot of the things that I grew up with, including religion. My current work is based on the legend of the apparition of the Virgin of Nuestra Señora de la Caridad del Cobre, which is the virgin that is like the patron virgin of Cuba. However, the apparitions of virgins, which have happened in Catholic circles for many, many centuries, it's something that has always attracted me, not necessarily from a spiritual or religious context, but as a fantasy, as the opulence, as the beautiful textiles, and just the way that it can create such a feeling within the people who experience the apparition. La Caridad del Cobre, originally, or the legend goes that she's always been a symbol for the oppressed, and also has been utilized as a symbol and reutilized as new symbols by different cultures. For example, that when she appeared in Cuba, she appeared to an oppressed African community, which the Spanish then later came in and took her, and then she reappeared in the community, kind of siding with the side of the oppressed. She was also a symbol for Afro-Cubans who wanted to continue their religious practices but couldn't under Catholicism. So I am reappropriating this image that has been such an important part of my life since childhood, and using her to kind of create a sanctuary for people who have not been allowed in traditional religious spaces. Yes, I'm using religious imagery, but it's something that is open to people who need a sanctuary, a place of discovery, a place to be alone, or a place to be with like-minded people, a safe space. And this is something that I had kind of been prototyping and experimenting with for a while. Oh, too forward. How do we take a drag performance, which is something so kind of ephemeral, like if you're not there in that nightclub, in that moment, kind of near the front, you miss a lot of what's happening. And as an artist, that is frustrating to spend so many months creating everything about the aspect of a performance and for it to only be seen in that moment, and which is great for the people involved, but how could I continue to invite people into that experience without me having to get in drag constantly and it become very physically demanding? So I started prototyping a lot with VR and AR extended reality. I would get in drag and then scan myself with an iPad and then use software that was free and available online to push the boundaries of what I could actually do in drag in the real world, which was another thing. In my storytelling, I had a lot of ideas that I just, for physical reasons or resource reasons, could not make a reality. I would want to fly, I would want to do backflips and things that I just cannot do. So that also became kind of an exploration of like, how can I tell this narrative in a way that would not be able to exist in the real world unless you were, like making some big budget movie. But AR or XR allows you to not just watch it as a video. You can be in it, you can explore it from many different angles where every single person's perspective or experience is different. And from that, my current practice, I'm currently living in Colombia, working as a community economic developer. And part of that comes from my teaching. In Miami, I had I had a studio. I'm permanently based in Miami. And I had a studio before the pandemic where I would teach sewing classes and crafts to adults and also to children at the public library. And it is a very gratifying experience teaching and being able to share that creativity with others and seeing just how important art is as a form of entertainment, as a form of therapy, as a form of confidence building. This is a clip of my sewing classes and my studio where you can see, well, here I'm in drag. I don't always do it in drag. But yeah, it's become a very gratifying experience and part of my practice. And now as I incorporate new technology into my teaching practice, I think there's kind of a limitless possibility, especially with sewing and crocheting and weaving and any sort of textile work. It's very visual, and sometimes as a teacher, I'll have students who want to be virtual or want to send me videos and ask questions, and it just doesn't work. And I think in an XR space, as it becomes more sophisticated, it's much easier to show concepts and show in detail how to teach and how sewing and knitting and crocheting and all these things work. And I think it has an incredible, not only community organization aspect, but a teaching aspect as well. Thank you. I'm gonna pass it on now to David.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Sante. I'm a multimedia artist and educator. I identify as my pronouns are he, him, and I am a Haitian American brown-skinned male. And my parents are from Haiti, and they immigrated into the country in the 80s. They were raised under Francois Duvalier's dictatorship from 1957 to 1986. And when they came to America and I was born in Brooklyn, I was raised under conservative religious state, and I was often seeking creative freedom. This is an image that I recorded in Haiti in 2010, days after the earthquake that took place. I went down with a small relief group to document and help and provide aid. And this experience, outside of historical context of imperialism, colonialism, and also the stigmatization of Haitians in media has drastically shaped my views and inspire the work that I do today. So this is footage that I shot on mini DV on the back of flatbeds, just driving around, capturing the country and the state at that time, and it highly influenced the work that I'm doing now. This is The Unholy Spirit, a piece of work that has changed and grown in XR through the Loop Artist Studios. I was one of the artists in the 5th cohort, I believe. And the work has evolved since. But what you can see in this work is elements of my culture and Haitian heritage, and also me finding spiritual emancipation in this space. I think working in XR has provided me the ability to have conversations with myself in this space and able to experiment with what I find hard to have in terms of having these hard conversations that it's hard to have in the real world, because in terms of the way I was raised and the context of what religion and regulation on spirituality to a certain extent was very difficult. And in our community, having parents that were raised under a dictatorship, we were taught to be very restricted in terms of not having certain conversations. And so I'm able to have these conversations in this space and able to freely explore with different tools, considering generative tools, graphic artist tools that I've been using for a while. And moving forward into my next space, I'm going to show you guys a piece that I presented in this space with Unholy Spirit. It's going to be a generative video short that confronts the imagery of how I perceive my culture was presented in the world in interacting with American Hollywood television and things of that nature. So from 1915 to 1934, Haiti was occupied by the American military, and from that time there was stories from folklore that were taken from families that would share with their kids in terms of, for example, like zombies. You know, everyone enjoys the subgenre of zombie films. And, those stories used to be shared with kids orally to get kids to, do their work and stay focused. And you would be threatened to be, like, turned into a zombie and be a slave to the fields and work, which was a direct correlation to our history of being enslaved as a people. So this short is an homage to the subgenre and also interacts with the actual history that it is from. And this is a generative short that I created. And how do I start it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Over there. Education. Everybody over here. We all need respect. All the people of the world are hoping for peace. Everybody, 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 everybody,
Oh, well, I'm going to blow it up. 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 Blow it up.
All right, so yeah, that's Zombie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
David,
you
for sharing
Thank
with
you,
us.
guys. So that short film, pays homage to the genre. You can see all the imageries that we're used to seeing: post-apocalyptic world, destroyed. Also had influences in terms of when we were going through the pandemic and watching the George Floyd protest and rioting and all the craziness that broke out at that time. And for me, it was like something that I needed to do in terms of responding to being bunkered in, having all this conversation of racial tension and all that stress, and then overlaying it with what I'm used to seeing in terms of the horror genre, and then also being able to interlay in that the folklore that it originates from. For the past.
Maybe if you can move a little bit faster because
I'm going. I'm just trying to switch to the next one. Next slide. There we go. Ooh.
Okay. Go to 5.
Yeah, there we go. For the past 10 years, I have been an contemporary art and digital media educator in Brooklyn, New York, serving the community in schools, the community centers, and most recently, I have partnered up Mud Foundation with Tech Kids Unlimited, which is based out of the NYU Tandem School of Engineering, to create a virtual exhibition with neurodiverse youth. And these are just some images for the initial generations. We're still building this space right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David.
So it's the yellow one?
The yellow one's to play?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Hi, so my name is Ariel Barron Robbins, and I am a couple of different things. I'm an artist, I'm an FIU professor in Miami, and I also began something called Loop Art Critique. So Loop is essentially a series of interconnected spaces. One of them is a critique space, and what we do is we have open calls, and we try to have, let me see what the next one, yeah, so here's a critique in progress. So we have an open call, and it's just for people who want to participate in an online critique. The open call is completely blind. So there is no artist statement, no CV, no bio, just art submitted, and the juror actually rotates each group. People can be from anywhere. The only limitation, of course, is time zone. And what we do is for a period of 4, now 6 weeks, we meet up twice a week, and we just talk about work. That's all we do, very specifically. This is in the Critique Club, which is private. And then at the end of the 4 to 6 weeks, let me go to the past. At the end of the 4 to 6 weeks, we have a public exhibition. And that is also collectively curated by the artists. It's usually about 6 to 8 artists because we get, sometimes 30. One time we got 300 when we partnered with Jiffy. Applications, and having, as much as I would love to have 20 people in a critique, if anyone here teaches, that's like not possible. So the great thing about keeping it small is we can have really long critiques, and they tend to go about 3 hours. Really fun, and our jurors will actually sit in during the critiques, as much as they can. They're usually professionals. So this is just how to get into the space. I wanted to show how easy it was. For me, it's really important that we try to get as many people in there in as wide of a variety of educational backgrounds. That's why we don't have any bio or artist statement or anything like that. So this is the basic way, essentially, that we, sort of the normal way that people come in, which is that they come in and they upload straight into the room. And then we actually expanded. This is all, by the way, Loop was an artwork that I developed for the Mud Foundation. So we're not a company, we're not a nonprofit. The only person that pays money is me, and to support it, and that's it. Tries to be no money. So what we did was we actually created another editor for people that were a little bit more technologically advanced. So here's a piece that was done in the other editor. And so we have 2 ways of working. One, very simple. One, for people that really want to play around, they can actually write code in here if they want. It's an online XR editor developed by the Mud Foundation through open source. We're quote unquote metaverse, whatever you want to call it, but Rodolfo developed a metaverse on his own in Miami. This is not tied to any sort of corporation. It is absolutely just artist driven, and everybody who works for Mud is an artist. So the last slide I'll look at is another sort of extension of Loop, which is Loop Studios. So now we have a hub, and Rodolfo and I picked 12 artists. Loop has been going about almost 2 years, maybe 2 years. We picked 12 artists from all the past critique clubs and gave them a studio space all on their own. And for me, having digital art, being a digital artist, having a studio space is often weird. You have a shared studio space with painters and sculptors, and it's usually just like me, a computer, and a printer, and that's it, you know, in a big white room. So I thought it would be great to have a place that actually is perfect for digital art. So these are our 12 artists, and actually we're going to go into, I think the last person that we're going to go into is another, you can also find all of this on loop.onland.io. So I don't want to take up too much time so we can get to questions.
Yes.
If you have questions, just ask me later.
Okay, thank you so much. So as you know, this panel is about XR and how artists and art organizations can use XR. I have a first question, which is interfacing cultural transformation context. XR, extended reality, is redefining how we, as a human, interact with machines and digital content, shaping the future where experience is at the center of digital interaction. And I have a question for the panelists. How does XR, extended reality, influence or integrate in your current work? And how experience over the internet change the way you are working right now with your communities?
So I think one of the most intriguing things about the Mud Foundation when we first got acquainted, that is evidenced, I think, in various aspects of all of our work, is the way that it's not just digital. Like, you've done a lot to have an actual physical space, an actual physical community. And in listening to many of the other panels yesterday, a lot of what we're talking about is how to not just be creative or be artists, but how to have specific geographic vitalization that does extend and isn't, you know, bordered literally. But so I think a lot about the way in which that physical and digital can collide, and the opportunity to prioritize time with people in a physical space that we're investing in as artists and as people who live there.
Yes.
A lot of my work started out as well as community organizing, event organizing, and XR is something that I believe could be very important for that community organizing. I'm the co-creator and co-founder of this event called Wigwood in Miami, which is a big queer trans drag festival. And during the pandemic, it became very apparent that we could not assemble, we could not celebrate and express ourselves. And we did attempt some virtual type of shows, videos, but it wasn't the same. And then I believe XR technology has the ability to, in the future, in the present and in the future, be able to bring together all those people, regardless of geographic boundaries or political issues happening in certain states, so that we can come together and celebrate as a community in a safe space without necessarily having to be somewhere physical.
For me personally, I feel that it's been gratifying to be able to work as rapidly as XR has allowed me to be able to bring in all the different tools from graphic work, graphic artist tools, video editing, and also just communication and interacting with other artists in the space through Loop, and being able to get instant human interaction and responses to the work. That has been very significant. And then on the educator side, I feel that working with neurodiverse youth and seeing how, when we're like on Zoom calls, how sometimes it can be a little difficult for them to clearly express themselves. But when I put them in the space and we're working or we're collaborating in the space, they're able to hit the ground running and kind of just take the prompts, whatever the assignment is, and jump and freely work in that space. And that's been pretty gratifying to see.
Yes, I mean, for me, it's provided a great, in some way, a correction to many things that I saw were unfair to artist communities. So I come from a southern rural state. You know, I only encountered contemporary art really when I got online, and didn't have the means to go to the best schools or live in, a an urban city center that would support stuff like that. So to me, I love the fact that in extended reality, we can bring people from all different geographical areas. We actually structured the critique times so that we can get into England and Italy, which we often do, South America, the West Coast, and as soon as I can find someone in the East, I will, start doing critique clubs there. So to me, the best, I love critique. I love art critique. As a professor, I sincerely believe that it's really great to share knowledge that way. But people that are not in, university, don't have access to it, or simply have decided not to go, they don't get that process. So to me, I was like, this is a way to bring that wonderful, very specific, and also just sharing knowledge, because we often get professors in there, and we have a Discord and we put links to other artists and to ways to make things and all sorts of stuff. And it becomes this amazing resource list to anybody that comes in. So it's fantastic.
Yes, one of the things that is interesting to point out is in the 90s, when the internet appears, there is a movement known as a net art artists. They have this expression that I love, that was a playful expression, that art existed because internet did not. And it's the idea of using the internet as an immersive space where you can transform our digital presence as an artist, as an art organization, and that's what we are trying to prototype in the platform that we are creating. Also, I think it's important that artists take technology in their hands, because otherwise we are going to be working with tools that are designed by companies that are focused on profits or another kind of context. In this case, what we are trying to do in MOD, what we are doing with the community that we work with, is to create a backlog that we are listening the artist needs, the organization needs, so internet can actually become that digital presence where we can extend our work as an organization and our work as an artist. There is a transformation on XR which is very important, which is how do we have interfaces, how we connect with machines in a device agnostic way. That's also very important. Computers, applications that require to be installed, they are a barrier to access to XR. XR at the end is an interface that is more human-alike. We are 3D beings, we learn in 3D. The 2D is just an interface that is based on clicks and windows, and the XR allows you to have a different interaction with the content. So I have a question for the panelists, is how you see the future of organizations and artists in an internet that can be device agnostic, that can use real-time servers, and can have another way to connect with audiences that is not based on what we have right now, which is mostly kind of a 2D interactive newspapers with videos and GIF, There is a transformation that comes with XR, which is a transformation of our digital presence. And I would love to hear how you envision this future, how you would like to connect with your audiences as an artist, educators, and project lead, in this context.
Well, I say that in my practice, I hack systems of power with art, code, and glitter. And I think one of the most effective tools I've found is in showing the vulnerability of what feels like totalitarian systems of power. I think about, when you search for Amazon, it's a company, not a river. Cherokee is a car made by Jeep, not a people. And there's all of these situations in which this technology has been trained to value profits over people and content over communities, and to find ways that it sort of glitches or fails in what is what we can often feel like is a useless set of resistances. There's actually quite a lot of vulnerabilities within the structure of these systems, whether it relates to code being binary, or the system of language that, all of post-structuralism has told us is like kind of infallible to begin with. Everything that XR and augmented reality and virtual reality is built on top of, it's high production, it's relatively expensive, but its roots are still in code, in language, in images, and I think kind of bringing people back to the fact that, language is unstable, that images convey many things, there's nuance and there's metaphor, and all of this as a tech stack grows into VR and AR, we can kind of stay also, have interventions like many of these artists do at the XR level, and also at the level of all of the dependencies that they're built on.
Yes, I believe being able to have a lot more transparency and control over where your information is going and who has control of it, for artists is way more important. I myself don't necessarily do a lot of the programming aspect, and so for me, having access to a platform that, like Rodolfo created with Mud Foundation, where an artist can come in and explore and be able to not have to depend on the bigger companies in order to do the development, in order to do the hosting and everything, I think makes it a lot less scary for artists. And it gives me the ability at least to be able to talk to somebody when I don't know what's going on, a real person, instead of trying to contact this big conglomerate which has no contact. So I think keeping things small in this context and accessible has been very productive for me in my art.
I think having the ability to bring people closer, right, heightening that human connection, but also in terms of bringing people into your brain space, and then having communities, often marginalized communities, have a space to interact and communicate and branch and grow outside of traditional media forms of how the world is used to seeing people communicate is definitely a great advantage to being in that space.
I think when the net artist, which is what I found, when I was 16 or so, came about, when they said that quote, it was all about communication. It was like, it's about connection. And to me, running Loop has been a wonderful way of connecting to many different types of artists and many different sorts of art worlds. And having those art worlds like a Venn diagram kind of overlap onto each other. And one of the nice things about Loop is that you can remain anonymous if you want to. A lot of the artists that come in, they go by pseudonyms. You can customize your avatar to be any GLB file. So we have people that come in as giant pine cones. We had a wonderful performance artist who performed as a pink Duchamp urinal, which actually talked. And, and that was a live performance inside of the space. So, but I think that, when it comes to what I wish would happen, I wish that we had more places like OnLand, that could sustain themselves, metaverses that allow for a lot of like customization of avatars. Also, like when we find a glitch in Loop, we can actually discuss if we want to fix it or not, right? Because sometimes the artists really like that glitch and they want to keep it around. And having an artist-run metaverse is fantastic because we can say like, hey, yeah, we found something, but we like it. We like it when it does that, so don't fix it yet until after the exhibition.
Yes, that's true. I think that one of the most important elements that we have to take in consideration as an artist and organizations is that our digital interactions are mediated by other factors. And I think it's very important that organizations take technologies solution in their own hands and to create new possibility for the communities. That's the way that we can create a digital ecosystem that is not ruled by corporate interests or profit or data farming structures, which is what is ruling right now the internet. At the same time, we are creating a feedback that on real time we can modify, having an approach to technology development that is known, or a methodology that is known like Agile, where we listen the artist's needs, we listen the organization needs, and we modify the software from one week to another. Having that level of flexibility in our organizations, I'm sure that it will impact positively the way we connect with our audiences, and also to develop new ways of collaboration, art creation, and access. One of the other elements that I want to bring up is the access to art that is already on the museums, and you cannot see it if you don't have a specific context. So I want to know how you see XR as a way to visualize that art that you can only see in a 2D screen on the different museums, if this is something that for education can change the way things are being taught right now in schools.
I'll just briefly say that I think all accessibility conversations have to be involve like geographic, financial, and technology accessibility kind of conjoined. But this isn't a particular area of my expertise. So.
I think a lot of museums and galleries have been actively incorporating a lot of new technology in the way that they present and artwork. I think there's now a lot more spaces to do experiences in virtual worlds. And as a tool for teaching, as mentioned before, I think it allows students to not only see visually, which would happen in a 2D or in a video, but they could interact, they can go all the way around, they can blow up something, they can shrink it down until they fully understand that concept. And I think that allows for a very varied way of learning. And I think there's a lot of people who have a lot of issues trying to keep attention, and if you're able to kind of walk around while you're learning and be, in a way, multitasking, I think XR could be very beneficial for that.
One thing I think that I found really interesting is you can see, with my experience in Loop, just seeing the various types of artists that interact in the space is one thing, right? But you could also see like the learning curve from people that have had certain amounts of exposure to working digitally. And when I was working on the work that I was making in Loop and on the platform, my son would come up to me and he was like, "Dad, you playing Roblox? What are you doing?" Right? And I think that's a big part of us, like having to realize that the youth have been working in these spaces, Minecraft, playing these games and connecting with each other, and it's very intuitive for them to really move in the spaces. Actually, it feels like, for us, it seems like something new, but something that they've been doing, and we're just trying to adapt for our time. And I think also in the class, and I've seen that with my students as well, how easily they were able to adapt in the XR when we were working in developing spaces. And also I think in the classroom, using your cell phone to be able to go into the MoMA or go into the Metropolitan Museum and pull up artwork. Yeah, it's on a screen or an iPad or on a phone, but they're used to that. They're used to having that in their hands. They were born with the internet and with everything that we're using, all the tools we're using now. So I just think it just makes it more accessible for them.
Yeah, well, first of all, but the On-Land, Mud Foundation's virtual XR space has collaborated with the National Gallery of Art. So you can just drag and drop artwork straight into your space. Of course, it's going to be accredited, back to them and to the artists. And we've seen artists doing that, like Joelle Mateague, who I showed a little bit of, had some Greek statues in her space, you know, and she was she's a Bahamian artist, and she was talking directly about the art history. And the other thing I think is the way I use it in my college classrooms is actually I bring in artists to talk, and I give them a space so that they can set up their work, you know, however they want it. I invite my students there. We actually do this real time in the classroom, and then they give an artist lecture. And the students can walk around in the space and look at things that they're interested in, you know, and compare and contrast. So I love the fact that, you know, I love the National Gallery of Art. I can't wait until we have even more access to these things, because being able to place something like a Greek statue next to your own work and then having that, you know, discussion about it is, I can only see positives.
Thank you so much. I think it's time to pass the question to the present audience and online audience. If there is any question that you want to make about what we've been talking about.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do you see that the artists will be able to make money doing some of this stuff in the metaverse?
Well, and in the phase we are more focused on giving artists new tools where they can develop their career. So we don't plan to be a financial platform for them, but we know if we give them the capability of creating their own spaces, their own meaning, their own content over the internet, that will for sure help them to have financial support. At the same time, we are working in the platform to create a marketplace that it should be a collaborative marketplace where artists can create digital content, and that content can be used by other artists or other organizations. But our priority at this moment is having the possibility of giving them access to XR technology, which is very expensive, very difficult to use. If you don't have an in-house engineer that knows how to work in Unreal or Unity, you will die before creating an XR experience, or you have to go to very limited applications that don't allow artists to be as creative as possible. That's why it's so important at this level of the project is listening to the artists, transforming this technology in a way that can be used for different background artists, different contexts, and making this gnostic to the realities that we are living as a community. So the economical impact will come after these technologies are adopted, and we will try to find a way with community partnership to support those artists' creations through the exhibition that we prepare, through the talks that we prepare. So we are at that phase right now.
And I think also there's sort of two sides to this, right? You're talking about lowering costs and increasing revenue simultaneously. And the tools are about lowering costs. And the notions of how we get people to pay for what we do, I think really do start with asserting that what we do is valuable as artists. And there is a tension between giving away things for free, whether it's our knowledge, our education, our experience, our communities, and then also having them exist in larger communities. I know the art world is not known as this notoriously open place, but it is a place where there's a lot of money. And there are artists who work in these spaces who get big grants, who get big museum shows, who have collectors, and I think we can't be too afraid of trying to do what we're doing at places like MUD and connecting ourselves to existing systems of value.
Yeah. Can I just jump in a little bit? Yeah, one of the we don't operate with any cost, but we do have a public exhibition, and artists can link off to wherever they want to. We have a lot of artists that use NFTs and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to bring is that when I was a young artist, I would see all these amazing artist residencies everywhere, but that was not going to happen for me because I was holding down jobs, and I couldn't afford them. I just couldn't afford to go. So one of the corrections I wanted to make with Loop Art Critique was to have that residency-like experience from anywhere and have it be free. Now, I apply to a grant every other month, trying to get some more money into Loop, and I don't want to be paid for Loop. I actually just would like to offer honorariums to the artists and to the judges. But yeah, I mean, I like it to not focus on making money. That's not the function of our critiques at all. We don't discuss that. But having a great residency with really interesting people, and our jurors are great. They're like Lorna Mills, and even Wade Wallerstein that was here yesterday. He's been a juror. And they're doing it, all for free until I get that grant, so.
Okay, I think there is another question. Okay.
Yeah, hi. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
To answer your question, I've been an AR artist since 2011 or so, and our engagements run often high six figures. So it's because it does take a team typically to build these things. It's not a single person. The technology load is pretty heavy. So we have a studio, and we have 6 or 7 figure budgets. Just wanted to take advantage of your guys' time, and we've been designing AR experiences for over a decade. I've got 2 kids that are 6 and 10. We're constantly challenged with tablets and everything, and I know from experience in Silicon Valley how much money is invested in some of the addictive and habitual hooks in these apps, and so we're trying to constantly fight battles over the devices. And I'm curious your thoughts about, yes, XR and AR can have powerful media capabilities, but it's also a mediated reality that requires you to experience the world through something or through a lens or through a device. I'm just curious your thoughts on the value there, or if you have concerns or struggles with that.
Yeah, well, in the technological aspect, the way that we've been approaching to this issue is that we try to be as device agnostic as possible. So we focus on WebXR, allowing any device, that has a camera to have an augmented reality experience, or entering from any device. It's gonna be mediated by the device that you are using, but in this case, you are using a web browser, which kind of gives you some level of freedom in the way that you create this experience. You actually deploy this augmented or virtual reality experience.
I think, considering the various types of experiences that are being developed, from the experience that I have, it's strictly like educational and career-based, career readiness. And I think, it's really just about the intentions of what the creator is having for that audience, and specifically the youth. I think there's a lot of value in terms of where we're going with how kids can interact from what they're used to what we can provide with them educationally.
I was going to say also with Tech Kids Unlimited, you have a lot of students that have limited, abilities, and they're able to create these amazing spaces inside. So that's where I was.
Yeah, it's fluid, right? They're already used to using some of these tools, and it does give them more accessibility. They do have more of an advantage in comparison to being in a social environment, in person, in a classroom.
I just want to put into this the idea of public art in the digital, and when we're through mediated devices and relational aesthetics, what it means. I loved in your work when your figure was in the church and various other places of semi-public space. I think those are fun notions to consider the complications of what it means to have public space in the digital.
Yes, and as this tool evolves, I think we're much more aware nowadays of the addictive nature of technology, and how that is affecting the development of younger children, younger adults, and adults. I think ultimately it's a tool for good, but we do have to keep in mind all the negative aspects that can be exploited and the addiction that can happen with any technology. And just kind of try to keep that at a balance where all the positive stays in the forefront as we battle that tech addiction.
Yeah, I will say one of the major reasons I started Loop was because I was seeing the NFT boom, and I was realizing, I was like, there's no place for these artists to get meaningful feedback on their work. Like, they could put it on Twitter, but that's not going to go well. You know, they could put it on Instagram. You know, that also could be and then a lot of times people just like it. You know, and like, if anyone's taught, you know, I have banned the word like and love in my critiques and in classes. So I wanted to create a critique space that was private. That's why it's private. You have to be given a role as an artist to get in there, because they can share in progress works and get feedback. And, you know, number one rule of Loop, we don't have many rules, but don't take a screenshot of anybody else's work without permission, you know? And so it's one of the few places I feel that you can really like feel safe and get critique and not feel like it's going to go down in history on a Twitter thread forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yes.
By people who aren't even artists.
Yes, that's why I think it's so important that we take our online presence in our hands and to try to relay the less possible in, you know, corporations and tools that are defining the way we are, or digital identities or digital presences. And I want to thank you. I think we are set. I don't know if we have a question. Okay. Okay, I see. I mean, it's a complex question.
Yeah, I've actually been,
I don't
I've
know.
been reading it.
Yes, yes. Yesterday I did a question, so I imagine it's somebody who make a question related to yesterday's subjects. It is possible to think that we are a threshold of something that it now doesn't has a form or shape, but is announcing a kind of renaissance inside the several problems that characterize the period that we are living on crisis. The death of a past give a space of something new. Well, if I get right the question, I think it's talking about the shifting world that we are living in, driven by the technology presence in our life, and what are we shaping as a society for the future. The way that I see it, I am not terrible positive on the future. I think we are heading very fast to a very mediated online and digital relationship between us. So imagine between us, there is Microsoft, there is Google, there is TikTok, and all these companies are taking in their own hands how do we interact and how do we behave. So for thinking a change, the only way that I see a possible positive outcome is that we as an organization take technology in our hands. That way, perhaps the future is going to be better. So far, we has been compromised, is how I see it.
So I think like we as artists, we always choose and exist within a history. And I think the amnesia of technology-driven excitement is maybe one of its biggest downfalls. And like to be choosing, so for my Facetune portraits, again, to place it within the history of portraiture, to place it within the history of that power, to even be placing all of these questions we have about addiction in the history of the tobacco industry, or in the history of, newspapers or media in general. There are accelerants and there are things that are unique about this time, but I think like looking backwards is maybe more constructive than looking forwards.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Just the way I read the question was kind of about AI. It was like almost a question without saying the generative AI, term. And I am a part, I'm going to plug really quickly an interesting X space, Twitter space called AI Art Today that I listen to, that is just AI artists that are talking about, they're excited, they're positive about it, And I feel like, artists have always been on the edge. That's why they're called the avant-garde. They're the first ones out. They're the ones that are going to take all the risks, and maybe fail miserably or maybe win. So I'm really happy about the Renaissance, but I feel like it's always been continuous, if that makes sense.
It has sense. Well, I think if we don't have any other question, I want to thank Westaff for the opportunity of bringing these very important topics with this panel. I'm very grateful with the panelists. We've been working together prototyping these new realities. This is something that is on development, and it's going to continue like that, I think, forever. But at the same time, it's starting to impact our community, the artists that we work with, and I invite you to visualize and to see their work. We have a small pop-up exhibition here that we can show how the technology works, and you are all invited to play around with what we are building. And any artist, any organization that want to enter in touch with us, with the artists that are participating here, please feel free and contact us, and let's build together what the future of digital entails for our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rodolfo. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.